It feels a little heavy to me.
But and that's my point is like, why does it have to feel so heavy? Why can't it be like planting a garden?
Yeah.
So that's all I'm saying is like, oh, I just need to embrace the fact that, oh, it feels heavy, but it's really not that different. And so let's not focus on this heaviness. Let's push through that and say like, okay, what's the next step?
Yeah.
Welcome back to In Residence. I'm Keith.
And I'm Laura.
Hey, Laura.
Hey, Keith.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing.
You're doing.
Yep. It's been a while.
It has been a while. I've missed this.
Good. What do you want to talk about?
Today I want to talk a little bit about projects and the natural cycle that I find myself going through when I'm going through projects. So the reason this came up for me is this weekend I've had the week off of work, which has been amazing. We went to the Indy 500, and then I have been spending the last 4 days pretty much outside gardening and landscaping.
Mm-hmm.
And I had an idea of what I wanted to get done. So I had some flower beds in the back of our yard that butt up against more wild area. So there's like tall grass and burning nettle and things like that. So I needed to do a lot of weeding and put down mulch and some weed suppression in those beds. I also had a garden that was freshly tilled. Shout out to my father-in-law for coming over and tilling that for me. But I had to, rake up the weeds from the tilling and then figure out where I'm putting the plants. I had to get the plants. And I was super, super excited. Like on Wednesday, I walked out there just ready to conquer the world. I was so excited. And as it got to Thursday, I was like, okay, I'm still going. I'm got this momentum, and I was trying to just bite off maybe 4 to 6 hour chunks of outdoor work at a time. And yesterday I got to what I think is the most exciting part. I'm no longer weeding, but I'm actually laying out and planting the little plants in the ground in my garden. By the time I got done with that, I got upstairs and I was exhausted. You found me carrying a bag of potting soil from the garage to our back deck in 2 feet chunks because I was just tired.
Well, and before you came back through with that in your hands,
Yeah.
I could hear not just your body language, but your literal grunts and
Oh, really?
you were
Was
you were I'm a sensei.
Yes, you are.
And I definitely was picking up on some unrest.
Yeah.
And I could tell you were
Like that reframe for me. Thank you.
I could tell you were getting tired and trying to push through, but those same emotions I was receiving from you, I interpret as I said, "Are you mad at me?" I'm like, "Is everything okay?" And you're like, "Yeah, I'm just tired." I'm like, "Okay." I'm like, "Cuz what you're sending out into the universe, I receive as maybe I did something wrong." And so I just had to say it out loud and not internalize it. But
Yeah.
the even funnier part was, so then you walk through, you grab this giant bag of potting soil.
Yeah.
And I see you and I'm just kind of smirking and shaking my head here she goes. She's going to keep doing this. And then you came more into view. I couldn't see your whole body. And then in your right hand, you also had a watering can. And I just started laughing and I'm like, she's stubborn.
Just making it super easy for myself.
Yeah. I'm like, oh my gosh, you have a watering can in your hand too. So that's the picture of you at that point of the day where you're trying to just power through. And I said, why don't you just take a break? And you're like, no, because then I won't get back to it.
I won't get back to it.
And then you were still getting back to it today, though, even though you powered through.
But I had, each day I've kind of plotted out, this is what I want to accomplish each day of this garden landscaping project. And yesterday, my goal was to get all of my plants in the ground, except for the outside border of the garden.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't there yet. And I kept running into just small little things that were kind of you've got to be kidding me. And nothing big. Like I was weeding and then I saw a snake out of the corner of my eye, like leaving the garden. I'm like, oh, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
Or I was to the point where normally I water everything because once the plants are planted, they want a little drink of water. Makes sense. But I hooked up our hose and it's leaking both from the nozzle. So I basically gave myself a shower 2 days in a row. Once because I thought I just didn't have it tight enough. The second day because I realized, oh, it's broken. And I was just very much in the dip yesterday. Very much in the dip. And sore. Very sore.
Yeah.
But this morning, like you said, I got back out there for a couple hours. I finished the border on the garden. I hooked up the new hose and the new water splitter I got, so neither one leaks. It's a miracle. It's beautiful. And I got to have breakfast on the deck that I always say thank you so much for building the deck because it's just beautiful and one of my favorite places.
Mm-hmm.
I got to eat breakfast on the deck, look at all the flowers and the garden all planted and in order. And it just gave me this sense of peace and accomplishment. I think that's how many of our projects go. They might not be condensed over 4 days, but from that excitement and energy and momentum to a dip and things we just are tripping over to a sense of, okay, I pushed through the dip and now I've accomplished what I set out to do.
Yeah, it's interesting that you're sharing that because I was kind of journaling about a similar thing with projects this morning. I go on tangents obviously when I'm writing, and one of the questions I asked myself was, what do I do when my priorities change? And then another thing that popped up, I was thinking about you in the gardening, and that's an example of a project where you've done it before. You have a pretty good grasp of what is before you to accomplish and what the outcome is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And there might be some ups and downs and like a snake here or there or a giant frog like you saw this morning.
Yeah, that was another thing that spooked me a little.
And then contrasting that with maybe a project where you have an idea of what the outcome is, but you've never done it. You've never done the steps. And that's kind of what I've probably been wrestling with for a long time. And so I was just kind of examining that and, processing on the page of how do I like raise my awareness of, having an idea of what I'm aiming for, even though I've never done it, isn't that much different than, say, planting a garden for the 12th year in a row.
Right.
The only difference is there's a little more uncertainty, but you accomplish both goals the same way, which is what's the next step and what's the next step. So I was kind of wondering that to myself, and it's something that I need to tackle over these next few weeks because I really want to have that focused action that I talked about, right? Like that's my theme of the year that I don't even have to remember because it keeps coming up as like, that's the answer. It's like, well, I'm not sure what to do next. What do I do? It's like, well, let's focus on the action that's going to get me to where I say I want to go. And for you, it's really tangible with the garden of, I want these plants in the ground.
Yeah. This is what done looks like.
Yeah. And so then as I was, talking out loud on the page, I realized another one of the things that maybe hold me back in projects of moving that next step forward is simply the uncertainty of whether it's going to be right? That perfectionism always pops up, and it's not even that. It's just like, is it good enough or is it the right thing? Am I making the right choice? Like getting stuck in that paralysis analysis. But then even further, when it's unknown because I've never done it, I feel like there's a little more vulnerability of saying, I'm going to try this, or taking ownership of saying out loud that I'm going to go and attain this goal.
Okay.
Planting plants in the ground is a great goal. It's not super lofty as the first year you ever did it, let's say on your own, right? Like the first
There's more
time,
comfort with it.
yeah. And so I'm just saying the only thing that's standing in the way of my progress is focused intention that leads to actions, no matter how small they are, just doing the next thing. I think the being on the hook, that idea or that ownership of saying it so that other people know that you're attempting, that can kind of mess with my head, I think. And then I kind of want to keep myself small and maybe not say what I'm trying to do. And I think it has something to do with not sure how I'm ever going to accomplish it.
It feels a little heavy to me.
But and that's my point, is like, why does it have to feel so heavy? Why can't it be like planting a garden?
Yeah.
So that's all I'm saying is like, oh, I just need to embrace the fact that, oh, it feels heavy, but it's really not that different. And so let's not focus on this heaviness. Let's push through that and say like, okay, what's the next step?
Yeah.
For you yesterday, I think that's how you got through that dip, right? You were tired. It was a long day. And I said, why don't you take a break? Why did you say, no, I'm going to keep going?
Because I knew that if I sat down for too long, or I just left everything on the deck half finished, I would have to do it today. And if I waited to do it today, that would mean the thing I planned to do today would just be added on top of it.
Like we might not get to podcast.
Right. We either might not get to podcast.
Was that like an actual thought in your head?
Not that we wouldn't be able to podcast, but it was a thought in my head. If I delay this today, that means tomorrow I'm going to have to do more, which will fill my day up more than I want it to. And I also thought, like, tomorrow my plan is mowing the lawn, so like I have like these guideposts that I want to hit and do a little bit at a time. So I don't have a marathon, squish it in one day.
Right. You're actually scheduling and having a calendar.
Yeah.
Actually.
In my head. Yep.
Yeah. That's a good thing to recognize.
I guess I never noticed that.
But I mean, that's planning.
Yeah.
Now, I tend to be of the mindset of, yes, at the same time, I will do that, and I'll be like, I need to push through and get this done and get to the appropriate stopping point. Kind of like you did, like I got to get this far because I don't want it to throw the whole schedule off. And at the same time, I tend to give myself a little more padding and can create a little. So like, I could see how if I was in your shoes yesterday, I might have cleaned up a little sooner and said, oh, I guess I'll get to this next time and I'll just push the schedule, because I would probably make it okay for me to say, I don't need to get this far. I wanted to.
Yeah.
Well, and that actually brings up another thing I was writing about. I went off on a tangent of the difference between wants and needs.
Right.
And that might be a conversation to have at another time, or it might feed into this, but like if I want to get this far, but I can do it later. And it might mess up my schedule, but I tend to, I don't know. I think maybe I don't want to overdo it so that I can come back the next day. But I also really like getting stuff done. So it's just kind of a complex thing, and I guess I'd have to be in it. And it's easy for me to say, hey, why don't you take a break? Then if I was in the weeds, literally you're in the weeds weeding, I could see you out the window.
So many weeds. And wood ticks and creepy crawlies.
Yeah. So I don't know. Those things come up, and sometimes it's simply just gutting it out. But I guess maybe what I'm trying to say is, it wasn't that painful for you to push through, was it?
No. I mean, in the moment, I was I was mad at myself.
You had like an UGG on.
I did. Well, I was mad at myself for buying so many pretty flowers, which I sat there.
It's like an oxymoron.
I know. And I thought, okay, so you are mad at past Laura right now because you found beauty in these flowers and you wanted to plant them and enjoy them all summer. And that's just silly, because I think I was more frustrated with myself because I told myself I was going to keep it simple this year. From what I've done in years past, I did keep it more simple, but I realized I bought a few extra things I probably didn't need to buy. But I'm going to bring some to the apartment. So it's going to be okay. It's just, I was definitely feeling then every time I realized I needed a new pot, I had to go find another pot, because I had more flowers to plant.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to go and find one I thought would look nice. And so it was a little bit of a decision fatigue and just.
Well, and you kind of have a deadline, right?
Right.
Whereas in previous years, you weren't going to be gone for 7 days after the weekend. You could always get home from work and spend an extra hour and a half or so.
Do a couple hours.
Finishing it up or just making steady progress, where this is like our new situation is you're going to be across the state.
Right. Yeah. And I also think in years past, I have worked from 5 or 6 a.m. in the morning when it got light until it was getting dark to get everything put in the beds. And although that worked, I'm just not as young. I get sore faster. I get tired faster. So I've learned that I need to break it up into manageable chunks for me.
Yeah.
You're right. There was more of a deadline and urgency to it to stick to my schedule. So that's why when I looked at you and I went, ah.
Yeah. That made me.
I remember doing that. And you're just like.
That made me bristle.
Yeah, I'm
because,
sure.
Like, I internalized that.
You're worried I was mad.
I'm like, what did I do?
You did
I'm giving you all kinds of space. letting you quote unquote.
Yeah.
Not letting you, allowing you the space to do the things that you want to do.
Yeah. And I think everything was fine until I got to realizing the watering situation was not going to happen because it was broken.
I did walk by where your sunglasses were on the half wall.
Yeah.
And they were just had beads of water all over them. And I'm I wonder what happened there.
There's more water coming out of places the hose connected to things than the hose itself.
Yeah.
Anyway, so it was definitely a thing yesterday, but like I said, I'm really glad I did it. I'm glad I stuck with it. I'm glad I pushed through the dip. Not for a big aside, but there are probably some folks that haven't heard the idea of what the dip is and where that comes from. Do you want to talk about that a little bit? Because I think it's a really powerful concept. And if people haven't been exposed to Seth Godin's works, I think that could potentially really be helpful.
Yeah. So Seth has a book called The Dip. And it's basically that low spot in a project where you might feel like quitting. The point is to understand that there's always going to be a dip. And if you don't think that you can push through it before you start, you should be aware that this is going to come. There's going to be a hard spot in this project. And if you're not willing to push through that, maybe it's not worth starting, because once you're in the dip, that's not the time to quit. That's the time to, like you did, buckle down, understand, oh yeah, this is the dip and this is the hard part that I should have seen coming, because I'm a smart person that knows that there's always going to be a low spot. Yeah. And the time to quit was before I started, not in the middle of the hard part. I'm going to get through this.
I mean, that's fair. I mean, the part to decide not to do it would be to say, you know what, I'm not buying any more flowers this year, or I'm going to let the raspberries take over my garden.
Yeah, like
if I can't
don't
push
take
through
the
this.
third trip to the nursery if you already don't have all the plants in the ground, maybe.
What? It's a practical key.
You said something that spoke really well to when I was writing about like when priorities change.
Mm-hmm.
When our circumstances change, our priorities can change, and like our circumstances have changed,
Right.
With where you are, during the week, for work, and so that's a big obvious one for us. But I guess for approaching anything in life or a project, what came to me was, okay, I have these circumstances, I have the situation I'm in. Am I going to be passive and allow it to play out? And am I just going to go with the flow? Or am I going to understand, like, oh, I'm aware that this is my circumstance. Now, what are the actions that I can choose to help the flow move along a little more, help myself move along a little more?
Yeah.
And I'm not 100% sure like why that came to me, but it's probably because I'm trying to figure out like how am I going to move myself along in the work I'm seeking to do? How do I make the change I seek to make? How do I use my skills and all these tools that I'm gathering to make a difference, right? And part of that is like getting paid for the work I want to do.
Right.
And so I think that comes back into today. I started to write, I need to ... And I stopped myself before I wrote down need, and I wrote, I want. And so the difference is I can tend to spring into action for the needs.
Yeah.
And I think I realize that I don't need to do the work I'm trying to do. In the grand scheme of things, it's more of a want. And I need to be aware of that, and that almost makes me kind of retract because it feels a little selfish. Wanting, and so it's kind of like what I was speaking of a little earlier. Like these threads just kind of keep weaving in and out of my head, and I catch myself like, oh, that's interesting. How come you're thinking of that? And why does that make you feel selfish to want something, or to, versus like the needs of our family, right? Let's say that's easy for me to drop whatever I'm doing, be selfless, and get the work done.
Yeah.
And like I've said many times, that's a great place to hide and to make sure that I'm not doing more significant work that might ripple and help other people, right? And what I want to start saying is I want. And that comes with the ownership that I was talking about. And
yeah.
And so I think there's more there to explore, and I kind of wrote a bunch, but like I have really bad handwriting, so I always have to go back and like take better notes on my notes. But yeah, like circumstances, needs, wants, like it's just kind of been circling around in my head, and I think it has to do with life and projects, and it's all connected.
So needs and wants. I think that's a really interesting construct that you're putting out there for how do we think about our day-to-day activities and what we choose to spend our time on. With needs, I think about it in two different ways, because you're talking about things that our family needs, right? So food, shelter, water, like those basic safety.
Yeah.
I think of those basic security needs.
And they're taken care of.
Right. And then I also think sometimes I use the word need as kind of a replacement for the word should. Like something I need to do is like something I should do.
Right.
So,
well, there's judgment in that.
Yeah.
And I think I kind of felt that. Or I kind of felt maybe need was too dramatic, because when I zoom out, I'm like, my basic needs are taken care of. and maybe I'm hiding behind that. When I say I need to do this, am I hiding behind it? Because in the back of my head, I'm always saying, I can always say like, well, I don't need to, because what I really need to do is to make sure everyone's happy and healthy. Whereas like, if I can take that ownership and say, well, I want to do this, or I choose to spend my time doing this, that's still holding myself accountable, but it's also being a little more honest of my intention.
Right.
Which can be a little scary.
Yeah. So that's what I was thinking, is that need, like you need to do this. I feel like it's somebody like standing behind you, wagging their finger at you.
Yeah.
Like saying, you need to keep going. You need to finish those pots today. You know, if I get into that mindset, it makes whatever I'm doing really from a place, I don't know if it's a deficit place, but like a really not empowering or creating type space, where if I flip it and I can get myself to reframe it, instead of you need to finish the pots today because you need to finish the garden and, you know, all that. Yeah. I'm wagging my finger as I'm saying it. Sorry.
I noticed.
But
if I could move away from it, I would.
I bet.
I'm up against the wall.
You're like, no. But I like what you said around wants. It's taking more that ownership for the decision of prioritizing what you're doing. And so I think even yesterday I was saying to myself, remember, you want to be able to have this part of the gardening landscaping process done. And you want to have your deck all set up tomorrow so the flowers are in their pots, so you can have your breakfast here and you only have this much left to do. And so I think I was talking to myself, not of, you better do this, it has to happen, but more of, I want to do this because if I do this, this is the benefit I'll get and the outcome I'll have.
That's your future focused.
Think so.
Yeah, that's one of your strengths and like one of your skills, and
yeah.
And that vision.
Yep.
That's been coming
Where are
up.
we going? Okay.
Like I'm a
Tell
fairly
me more about that. Sorry, I cut you off as you were telling me more about it. To say, tell me more about that, Keith. Yeah. We've been watching couples therapy with Orna.
Yes. Speak.
What say you?
Sorry. I'm an aware person. I pay attention, not always to what needs attention, but I am aware. And so just like I need contacts or my glasses to see clearly, to have that kind of future looking, I need a little bit more of a prescription or a perspective shift, because I don't always go to that.
Yeah.
And I think it's maybe my disposition of maybe not tending to look at the upside. And so I need to kind of correct that and think, okay, how am I going to shift my perspective so that I can go to where I'm aiming, so I can see a little more clearly, like that clarity, versus having to hold things so close to my face to see, like what are, there's got to be a bunch of tools that we've talked about to help shift my mindset to looking a little further ahead and that planning. And I've been working on it, but I forgot what day it was today because we've been a little bit out of sorts. I thought I was late for a meeting. And you're like, no, it's only Saturday. I'm like, oh, okay. So I think that's the biggest thing is I haven't taken a whole lot of time to plan or to have that time to set myself up to have that space, like the white space or whatever. So there's something there that I could probably write like a blog post about or something of, just gaining clarity. And that was I was in a meeting that was about that. So it really helped me to realize that I can use my awareness, pairing that with some perspective to gain clarity is maybe the short way of saying that. And to help me maybe face forward instead of like down at my feet or whatever's like right in front of me. And I know that kind of that butts up against this idea that, being present, but I might use the present in a more effective and efficient way if I'm saying out loud where I want to go in the future, working towards it. I feel like our whole conversation just is cyclical in a positive way of like, I keep coming back to, I want to be mindful, I want to be present, but if it's not strategic, if it's not helping me get to where I want to go, then am I just kind of spinning in circles? Like, what's my trajectory? Like, it's okay to have trajectory. And I think I'm not used to that. I'm not used to that being okay with saying I want to go there. I'm used to saying, oh, where are we going? Where am I tagging along? Right? So I think it's under the surface, and it's stuff for me to spend a little more time examining.
Yeah. I've listened to a couple different books that I think would be interesting to have you listen or read and then talk about. Mm-hmm. One that I think I'd like to just mention and have you put it on your list of things to listen to is Lessons for Living by Phil Stutz. I know you're listening to The Tools by him.
Yeah.
But the Lessons for Living, there's a lot in it around how do you get clear about what it is that you want to do to be fulfilled, and naming it and setting up the routines and the structures and reducing the bad habits that prevent you from getting to living your most fulfilled life. And it's just a really good book. But maybe we can read that, and you can read that and I can read The Tools, and we can talk about it on an episode sometime. It might be really interesting. Yeah.
The Tools has been really great. And we had watched the documentary on Stutz, and I finally got to listening to the book. It's Phil Stutz and Barry Michaels. It's got like the 5 main tools in there are really powerful, and it's one of those things where I'm listening and I'm like, oh, I feel like you're writing about me or exactly what I need to hear kind of thing. And I'm like, this is great. So I think it's some universal things in there to help people move forward and to work through the dips and the trials and tribulations that always pop up. So yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah.
I feel like that's almost like a mini recommendation right there too.
It is. Yeah. So I did have one more thing around this. So with the garden, I was talking about a project, right, that was over a shorter amount of time, right, like a week of vacation. And now it just takes maintenance. Another area, so you talked a little bit about white space, and I've been finding after having some time off, and this is an episode in and of itself, but after having time off, I found that I have more creativity and more clarity about what my priorities are, both on projects I'm working on as well as work. One thing that I've tapped into is using AI as a partner to help me understand what some of those steps and structures I might need to put in place to be able to help me make progress to complete a project of a certain type. That's been incredibly helpful for me. So I have always been, I don't know if you were like this, but I'm just going to like bare my nerd self right now. I have always been someone that wants to find the best way to organize myself.
Yeah, you and I are a little addicted to office supplies.
Yeah, like Post-it notes, tabs, folders, all the things. I could spend hours and hours Googling different people's models of how to be organized or how to set up the perfect way to do a project this way and keep momentum. And I found that I can ask those same prompts into ChatGPT. Be like, hey, I'm thinking of a project like this. I need to have the structure that will keep me on task, but give me some flexibility and not take entire days at a time to do. And it'll spit out a recommendation for me of, here's one way I think you could do that. And I'm like, whoa, it amazes me because I don't have to read 50 articles now to get to that point, but I can take it and be like, okay, I like this. I like that. I don't like that part. Maybe that piece would work. And then I can dig deeper into those pieces either with the AI tool or just with my own creativity to make it my own. I just wanted to throw that out there, that is something we kind of talked a little bit about project planning. Maybe this doesn't fit here either. Maybe I'm taking us in a completely different direction.
So you're saying using the AI tools available as somebody to like a thought partner and to be able to like gain some clarity and help you create structure and organize your project. I think that's a perfect use of like these large language models, having this assistant that doesn't judge you. You can tell it not to judge you. You can tell it to not tell you what you want to hear or what it thinks you want to hear. Diving into AI is something that you've been doing more and more lately, and that's probably a whole nother tangent-filled episode. But yeah, that setting up the structures for your project it's like the only way to go, right? It's like you had structure with the garden. You knew what you had to do. You had a schedule, and that's how you got it done. By checking off the steps that you laid out for yourself. Another thing that popped up again is Tim Ferriss mentioned Scrivener, and we were talking about that as a tool.
Yeah.
You were asking me about organizational tools for like writing, and then you asked AI, I think, in the car. So I heard Tim Ferriss talk about it again, and he said it's the best tool that he's found for helping him organize a large project.
Got it. I've
heard a lot of people that use it for their writing projects, and so anyway, that popped up because that's more like planning and like scaffolding to help you get through the project. So and taking the time to give yourself that space to plan and strategize, I think is really important. Returning from our trip, it takes me days to reacclimate. And like I said, like I wasn't quite sure what day it was because you've been home and we've been like going about things a little differently because you're home. So I'm like, it usually feels like a weekend when you're home, and it finally is, but it wasn't the same day that I thought it was. So that threw me off, even though I have like a watch with a calendar on it and stuff. I haven't been paying attention. So I got out of my rhythm, and it took me a while to get back into the practice of processing and writing things down. Like we talked about, like connecting dots and stuff. Like it took me a while to get to that. But today I wrote like 3 or 4 pages because I gave myself the time and space over the last few days to just do a little bit at a time to get back into the habit. And then today it was just kind of flowing out of me. Yeah. So that was nice. But I guess I didn't realize I was setting myself up to keep gaining momentum, and maybe that's a good thing for me to acknowledge is I stopped trying to make myself write 3 pages every morning. Like I know the morning pages are like a great tool that a lot of people use, but forcing myself to go 3 pages or limiting myself to only 3 pages, I don't need that constraint. Yeah. It's a lot of pressure. Yeah. It could be. Yeah. I found that I simply need to write. And if it's a paragraph one day or half of a page, or today I think I filled like 4 pages. And it's not always just longhand. Sometimes I start writing checklists, and then because my mind goes off, and like a quarter of 1 page is I just was writing all the notes in every key signature. That's like another way of me checking off one of the things that I say I want to do is get better at music. And so again, if I don't take the time to process on the page, that stuff will swirl in my head for a while, but then it kind of floats off. and I haven't like documented or captured it. And so planning, very beneficial. It's not necessarily my go-to, because I tend to not, like, this brings us back to maybe where I started. I tend to shy away from the new things that really benefit from planning and taking the time and attention that the planning process needs. I tend to fill up my hours with the needs and the things I know have to get done. So I'm trying to shy away from that and not let that take up too much space.
Yeah. One thing that, and I don't know if this is helpful, but with planning that helps me is I think about it as I like to have a plan in place, because that requires less mental energy and decision fatigue later down the road. So if I already have a plan of how I'm going to be doing something, that helps me from a decision fatigue standpoint incredibly, where I'm like, I'm just gonna keep moving forward and I'm gonna do this because it was on the plan. And whether that's helpful or not, but not having that, even a soft structure in place or soft plan, nothing that's rigid of you must or you have to, but having something that kind of gives you at least some of those guidelines and structure, I feel like it helps me not be weighed down by now what's next. Like having to make those decisions and determine what path to take. It can be really exhausting for me.
A couple things with that. I like having a rough sketch of maybe the arc of like where a day is going. So say like when we travel, us being on the same page of like, well, we're going to have to eat at these times, and this is like the thing that we're aiming to do today, but then having the rest of it up for let's see what pops up. Like, that's fun for me.
Yeah.
Now, the decision fatigue that comes with a project, especially one I've never done, I think that might be something that stops me from starting. But what I just heard from you that I maybe need to lean into is it might not be so maybe overwhelming if I choose to go through the process of pre-planning what decisions I'm probably going to have to make and choosing to go through those versus, oh, I'm overwhelmed at not knowing quite what's going to happen, and therefore I'm flustered and this and that. Like that's just something that popped in my head of like, oh, maybe if I decide like, hey, there's going to be decisions that need to get made. How would I do a rough outline of what I think needs to be done? And actually now saying that out loud, it's probably how I've gotten most projects done of like, okay, I need to get to the finish line, and these are like the 7 to 10 steps that are the milestones that are gonna get me there, and then breaking those down into smaller steps and stuff like. So anyway, I'm probably not saying anything that nobody doesn't know this, but when I say it out loud, I'm like, oh, it's like an epiphany. I tend to overlook the fact that maybe I do plan more than I think because maybe it's just automatic.
Yeah.
But intentionally setting aside time, that'll help me move forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm rambling.
It's not an episode without a little ramble.
Yeah. Okay. Do you have any recommendations or anything you want to share that you've been taking in?
Let me see.
Aside from what we've already recommended throughout the episode.
Yeah, stats. Stats, the dip. One of my recommendations is a fiction book that I really like called The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. It's a good read to kind of give you a perspective on life and about how small decisions can change the trajectory of the life you know, and how sometimes that can be good, sometimes it cannot be good, The Midnight Library by Matt Haig.
Cool.
How about you?
I'm going to recommend the show that I got you to start watching with me, Taskmaster.
Oh gosh, yes.
It's from BBC, and it's on YouTube also, full episodes. And it's a panel show with comedians that have to perform ridiculous tasks for points, and they win a prize at the end that's also ridiculous. Jason Mantzoukas is on it this season, and so it's great watching him be on this show in the UK where he's like the annoying American, and he like really leans into that role. It's just funny, and then a nice way to kind of wrap up like an evening. And I was just rolling laughing watching it. So it's a fun little show. And then so yeah, check it out if you want to.
Yeah. Can I shout one more thing out?
Sure.
We've been watching a show, and I mentioned it briefly at one point, but Couples Therapy, a new season is out.
Yeah.
And so it's something you and I really enjoy watching together.
Yeah, that's on Paramount Plus, like through Showtime.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a good show. Like it's a little dramatic, right? And a little
can be.
It's like reality show, but it's also got a lot of good insights into relationships and people.
Yeah.
So yeah, I enjoy that one too. That one's a little heavier.
That one is a little heavier,
yeah.
But I enjoy watching it with you.
Yeah, it's good. Awesome. All right, let's get out here.
Sounds good.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. It's not an episode without a little ramble.